All right, morning, everyone. It's Dave Margolin. Another edition of the Subseasonal Forecast Contest. Today, hard to believe, it's September 8th. So we're still forecasting CDDs through the end of the month. And the target window for today is September 23rd to September 27th. Let's see, just quick housekeeping note before we get going. I think Zach mentioned this in the MailChimp email, but we do have we've added the ECMWF and the CFS, some of the maps. You can see them here. So all you have to do is click on the button, and so you should be able to pop up the different maps here. So we've got the 500 height the global 500 height anomaly, the hemispheric anomaly, and then U.S. temperature maps. So we've got those. And the main reason to have those, I think everyone who's on the call and part of the contest also has access to the Maxar account. But what we haven't been able to do previously is save these maps so that when we do our look back at previous weeks, a lot of times we want to say, hey, what was the 500 millibar height pattern like, 2-3 weeks ago? So now these are saved, so we can unfortunately I wasn't able to create a long history, but at least kind of going forward, we'll have these when we do our retrospectives. So that's good news. Thanks to our friends at Maxar. All right, let's see for today, guys. Anything beyond our usual here? So we'll look back at the most recent verifications, and then we'll kind of get into our forecast, today's forecast. Any other agenda items or anything else that folks want to make sure we cover today before we get going? Okay. I know there's definitely some interesting, obviously, weather going on with the snow and cold weather. I saw something in, in Denver that they said a couple days ago it was like 100 degrees, or a day or two ago it was 100 degrees, and now they're under winter storm warnings. So you got to love that. All right. So yeah, let's start off with the most recent verification. I think that's from the 18th. Let's go there. Yep. Okay. So this is the forecast from August 18th. So the verification was just a couple days ago, September 2nd to the September 6th. First of all, let's see what the verification was. We verified at about 49 CDDs. I know there's a lot of inputs here now, so it's kind of gets lost, but the bottom here, 49 CDDs. And that, just to give you a perspective on that, the 30-year was about 37, 38 CDDs, and the 10-year average was about 44. So this is certainly a forecast that was warmer than both the 10 and the 30-year. In terms of performance, I'll filter here by performance, and so you can see here, looks like Dave D'Arcangelo led the way with the highest performance numbers. You can see he had a forecast of 48 CDDs. Persistence, the 15-day persistence was pretty good. Sean Parker, one of the students at Rutgers, also, I don't think he's on the call right now, but he had a really good forecast. Professor Decker. Looks like in general, we had a lot of good forecasts here, at least relative to the 30-year. Even the CFS, which we've noted a number of times has been too cold, was warmer than the 30-year and got some points here. So most of the forecasts were on the, all of the forecasts, I should say, were on the good side of normal. And we had some really good forecasts here too. Let's look at the, let's just take a look at our Dynacast so that we can see what the actual forecasts look like. Or I'm sorry, the verification. And we don't yet have the forecast maps from this period. I wasn't archiving them at this point. All right, so this is September 2nd to September 6th. This is our verification period. So certainly, in particular from Missouri, all the way out east, this certainly was, you can see why. So the CDDs were so high. Remember, these are nationally population weighted CDDs, right? So, a lot of big cities here were covered: Chicago, St. Louis, Kansas City, all the way over to Philadelphia and New York. So a good chunk of the area. The only areas that were cool tended to be less populated areas, with the exception maybe of Phoenix and such. Let's look at the, let's pull up the editor's notes here too. Yeah, so I already loaded this. This was the forecast from Maxar on the top left, and the EC and the CFS. These are the 2-meter temperature perspectives. So it looks like, well, certainly the CFS, you know, from a pattern perspective, you know, I don't know. I'm saying this subjectively. I don't have a correlation map here, but this does not look good, right? I mean, just too cool, in particular in the east parts of the country. I guess the European, which generally had a better rendition, but we know from the verification that actually the focus of the heat was at, you know, the eastern third of the country. So from a national perspective, maybe it wasn't, you know, maybe it was okay. I don't know what letter grade you want to give it, but from a regional perspective, if you're a trader or had sensitivities in the northeast parts of the country, you know, you would have missed the fact that that was where the bulk of the heat was. And, you know, the center part of the country actually was where we had a slice of cool, including back toward Arizona and New Mexico. So that, I'll just flip back here so we can see it again. Yeah, so this area actually turned out to be kind of normalish to cool across the middle part of the country. So, you know, it looked like there were some issues with these, or sorry, this is today's, some issues here with this, also with the Maxar. Hopefully they won't mind me saying, but again, having the bulk of the warmth across the middle part of the country actually did not work out too well. Let me open it up here before we switch over to the forecast. Any other thoughts on this period?
I don't know if it's necessarily for this period, but looking at that temperature departure map, it looks like there might be some cold building in Canada that might end up spilling down somewhere in the CONUS at some point.
You mean back over to the Dynacast?
Yeah, looks
Well,
like there's some pretty cold air up there. At
and
least,
yeah, and that's actually what happened here. Sorry, let me go to, let me switch over. This is, we'll use the Maxar maps here. I'm going to switch over to temperature departure. That's actually what's coming down right now. So I'm looking at the EC ensemble. Doesn't really matter which model, but this is the short term. So this is actually looking at, you know, hours. This is basically today. And that's absolutely what happened, Mike. Some of that cold air is getting tapped with that. If you look at it from 500, you can see this trough that's splitting off. So we had, let me open this up a little bit. So this is the 500 millibar height pattern. You can see we had this almost like that EPO style, the negative EPO, that ridge kind of built into the Gulf of Alaska, and it absolutely did tap into a piece of that. I don't know if it was Arctic, but certainly Canadian air mass. And a piece of that you can see is diving down the Rockies. So this is that piece that's actually helping to, you know, trigger the snow and the cold. You can see it kind of gets split, and it comes all the way down into the, you know, southwest United States, while another part, the northern branch, kind of lifts out. So yeah, we did eventually tap into that. And here, I'll go back since we're talking about it anyway. Let's see what the snowfall here. This is a cumulative snowfall. So this is a 24-hour. Let's see what the operational is showing. Yeah. Let me zoom in a little bit. United States. There we go. Yeah. So those are pretty good. We'll see if this works out, but those purples and such are over 2 feet of snow, according to this.
yeah, I saw a few pictures on Twitter. It looks like so far most amounts seem to be between 6 and 12 inches.
Yeah.
Eyeballing, of course. I don't have official measurements, but
Yeah, this is probably the higher elevations too. I forgot the name of the mountains, not the San Juan Mountains, but I know there's a high range there in southern Colorado. Looks like it's suggesting could get walloped there. Let's see what else. So certainly a warm pattern. Let's just take a quick look, or it was a warm verification, warm pattern too, I guess, for the eastern half of the country. Just curious what the MJO was. So we said It was the forecast was initialized on what, the 18th? Is that what it was? Yeah, August 18th. So I'm just curious. Let's see what the MGO was doing back on the 18th. So on August 18th, the MGO was out in phase 8. And then during the verification of it, it verified, it looks like what, phase 4-ish? So it moved pretty good clip from phase 8 to 4. Let's just take a quick look at our little MGO tool and see what it was showing for that. So if we gone back to like August, say 20th, and we were looking out 16 to 20 days from phase 8, I don't think that's a super clear signal to me. Just based on the MGO, it looks kind of muddled to me. I think I actually remember us talking about that too. The fact that it was, I don't look at this and say, oh my gosh, I should be going super warm based on the this little MGO analog kind of tool. Anyone else see
Yeah, I
Yeah,
that?
agree because the amplitude's not as it's not in the -2 range
Yeah,
that shows the really warm signal.
yeah, yeah. What else? What else? Let's also take a quick look at let's look at the cooling season to date. Let's see if we see any interesting phenomena. Look at bias first. So the CFS, even with this forecast, it was a little bit better this time around. Bias is still very noticeable, -10.
I was gonna mention on that also with the CFS that even though it did well, comparatively speaking, if you had still added that +10 bias, it would have done even better. So even when it does well, adding the bias to it still makes it better.
Yeah,
I know we've been beating that horse for a couple months now, I guess, but
no, that's a good point though. That's a good point. You added, if you added that +10, it would have been much closer to verification or whatever. So, and I think if I'll just another quick reminder, I think Zach shared that report in the Mailchimp. So if you haven't seen that yet, Nat Johnson's he did a little study on the performance of the CFS if you bias corrected, and it was kind of interesting. All right, so directionally correct, I believe, in terms of folks who have participated almost 100% of the time, or 100% of the time. Paul Roundy, by a slight margin, leads the way. Paul's got 94% of the time. He's been on the right side of the 30-year climatology. Professor Decker not too far behind, and then we've got a number of other folks here. The CFS is so the CFS not this is not good. 37% of the time, the CFS has been on the right side of normal. Performance versus consensus. Consensus is tough to beat. But one of our students from Rutgers is doing quite well here. Less forecast, but this is his first time forecast, and he's doing quite well. And then Maxar is also, that's industry number one. Maxar is doing quite well here. That's because it's their data, so they're cheating. No, I'm just kidding. But let's do performance versus the 30-year. I do that right, yeah. So a lot of folks are doing. It's you can see it's easier. I don't know if that's the right word. I think it's the right word. Well, it's performance versus the 30-year tends to be, folks are tended, scoring much higher versus the 30-year. You can see a lot of positive numbers, almost all positive numbers here. But when you look at it basis consensus, again, much harder to beat consensus than it is to beat the 30-year, at least for this summer. All right. I don't know. I don't think I have anything else in terms of retrospective here. Does anyone else have any thoughts on this forecast? Well, the other thing I'd say that bugs me, just coming back to this point, it would be, I think Maxar actually has this on their website. If you look at their performance metrics, actually, let's look at this real quick. They have something verification. I think they look at the the skill score versus as using I think it's like a spatial correlation. So like, for example, they don't have this for the 16 to 20, unfortunately, but let's just do this. I don't know, 11 to 15. So let's see, can I blow this up? Yeah, let me blow this up. So this is 11 to 15. And so what this shows you is like I think it's something, and they have the more information in fine print here, but I think it's like the correlation, spatial correlation from the various models versus in this case, North America 500 mile height patterns. I, I really like that, right? Because, we talk about this a lot where sometimes you're right for the wrong reasons and things like that. Like, you get the CDD or HDD number right, which is important. But sometimes you get it right, with a pattern that's not what you were expecting. You know what I mean? Like in theory, you could expect, hey, I expect this big ridge trough pattern and 50 CDDs, right? And then it comes in a big trough ridge pattern, but you still get the 50 CDDs. You got the pattern completely wrong, but you got the CDDs right. So this is a nice tool in kind of looking back and saying, hey, are the models getting the pattern right, and it gives a lot of information there. You could see as you get to the 11 to 15, I haven't investigated this a lot, so when I'm just giving my subjective opinion on this without too much investigation, but like some of these numbers don't GFS ensemble on this, these numbers are 0.2 down here, 0.3. I mean, it peaks the GFS ensemble at like 0.5, and then it goes back down again. You can follow this 0.4, 0.3. Those kinds of spatial correlations don't get me too excited, but I guess in some respects, I guess that's kind of consistent with what we're seeing. Like a lot of times we see the patterns don't match up that well, the pattern verifications with the pattern forecast. I guess the best performers here, no surprise, tends to be, it looks like the EC's in yellow. And the EC at times peaks at, looks like 0.6-ish. But also at times dips down to 0.2, 0.3. I think this would be interesting to study more. I'd love to look into this more to see how often. I'd love to come up with a measure. Like this is still a little vague to me, I guess it's not quite tangible. I'd love something a little bit more tangible to be able to say, to kind of almost grade it, kind of like we do with the skill, like to say, hey, this pattern's like an A, this pattern's like an F, this pattern's like a C. And so that we could get a better understanding maybe of situations where the models are going to resolve the pattern well versus situations where they're not going to resolve the pattern well. I don't know if I explained that well. Anyone else have any frustration or thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit surprising to see that the Canadian is performing so well compared to the other ones, because usually, at least going back, I guess 5 or 6 years, the Canadian used to kind of be a joke, at least to me, of a model. But now it seems that it's not only keeping pace with the Euro, but even in some areas it's performing better than the Euro, at least with that chart in the 11 to 15.
We had a joke about the Canadian in the weather community that the CMC stood for constantly making cyclones.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Dave, real quick, since you're talking verification, have you ever looked at the Weather Prediction Center's 7-day verification page? Actually, they have beyond 7-day. They have multiple verification options.
No, I don't know if I have, or at least not recently. I remember a long time ago I used to look at some sort of thing on CPC or one of the sites. But yeah, if you have that link and can throw it in the chat.
Yeah, I'm trying to find, now that they moved to the new form on their website, there's legacy page. Medium range, anomaly correlations. And what this does is it takes their actual forecast they do for the days 3 to 7 and compares it to what the models were showing.
Yeah, I'll pull it up.
And here's another one that also,
Oh yeah.
this is the EMC option. And they actually used to have a Visual Basic, and same thing. Once they got, when all of the NOAA had to go through a revamping of their websites, they changed it to this.
Yeah, no, this is cool. This kind of stuff. Yeah, I think I would love, maybe we can, this is another one of those projects, right? But it would be great to, I think about ways where we can integrate that in. Because I think there's a lot of value here in terms of this. And I was just, to what you guys were saying, I was just looking at this is nice. They have the summary too, right? Where you can look at it by these different variables, and you can look over the past. You can look here the lead windows, so 1 to 5, 6, 10, 11, 15 on top, and then on the left, you can look at a different time uh, periods, and this is yesterday, week, month. So over the last month, you could see near in the 1 to 5, it's almost a perfect correlation, spatial correlation anyway. And then you could see in the 6 to 10, I know it's probably hard to see, but it drops off a little bit. There you go. I'll blow it up. You see, but then there's that big drop off in 11 to 15, and I'd hate to see the 16 to 20. Obviously, we don't even have that. But I guess the question, like the question I'm trying to wrap my head around, is like, at what correlation does it become almost noise? Like, I know with some statistics, like around a 0.3 correlation, depending on the sample size, 0.35 is, starts to get down to like where it's, almost not statistically significant. So it would be, it would be really interesting to study. Maybe we could look at some of those sites and try to figure that out a little bit in terms of what kind of spatial correlation are we dealing with from the CFS and the EC? How much should we even be, weighting these maps? Like, when I say these maps, I'm, kind of like these maps here, right? Like, are they even, are they doing us? Are they helping us? You know what I mean? How much are they helping us at this point? And maybe even beyond that, how cool would it be to look at like different kinds of conditions, like condition on different patterns, whether it be MJO, ENSO, or even, things like teleconnections, NAO, AO. I don't know. Any other thoughts on that before we hit the forecast?
Well, since you mentioned the teleconnections, that EMC actually has an option to choose the verification of the models in the P&A region.
Let's see if we can.
Yeah, go to GFS verification.
Oh, the GFS one. Oh, okay.
Yeah, on the left. Well,
okay.
No, it was the actual GFS, the operational.
Oh, sorry. Where did I hit?
On the left, yep.
Yep.
And then grid to grid.
Grid to grid. Okay.
Anomaly correlation.
Okay.
And then in the drop down of regions, select P&A.
All right, let's do it.
And then you can change your days, your forecast lead right next to that.
Oh, this is nice. Yeah, 10.
And then you can also change the valid, whether it be 12 Zulu model runs or 00 model runs on the left to that even.
Yeah, no, that's nice. And we have some of that too, right? On the so what does that show? It's pretty good. It does have, what's this, the average down here? GFS, ECMWF. It's an interesting scale that kind of annoys me, right? Because it throws you off. It goes from minus 0.6 to 1.0.
Yeah, that means that let's see here, 15, 16, 17. On the 18th, the only model, Canadian and the Euro were the only ones that did decent. The GFS Para, which is all the way on the right, and then the GFS Operational did horrendous. Kind of reminds you of the CFS. Forecast the opposite of what it showed.
Right. No, I like this is good stuff. This is great. And again, I still think there's an opportunity to make this more tangible. I don't know if I know it's not easy, but like, even United States, right? Like, wouldn't it be great to have like a United States? And wouldn't it be great, just, our dream scenario here? I would love, what would I love? Like, I'd love for one of these drop downs to have, well, first of all, United States. I'd love the leads to go out to, 20 days,
Yeah.
right? So that we could look at the 20-day. And then I'd love to break it down by like initialized state. So then, in other words, there's another, I don't know, maybe it would be another drop down. And it would say, okay, so you could choose all dates. And then not even that, right? All dates. Then you could choose it by calendar periods. So maybe I just want to look at winter or summer. So I want that option. Then beyond that, so then let's say I filter for winter. Then I want to say, okay, then I, update 16 to 20 winter. Okay, great. As many years as I can, of course, or then maybe I want to look year by year. And then I also want to look by, climate features and things like that. So maybe ENSO versus La Nina, or MGO phase, or But I think I would love. It's. I think we could get there. It's just it would be a little bit of that. There's data involved. There's a lot of data.
Yeah. I totally get it because, like, for instance, forever I've been asking Ryan Maui to have not just the North American, Northern Hemisphere view on his website of verification. Same thing with WeatherBell, and I even bring up how the WPC has the U.S. Verification rates out to day 7, and it just falls on deaf ears.
Yeah. So that's something hopefully we can put on our backlog. All right. So I guess we can switch over and talk about the forecast now. All right. So today's the 8th, right? All right. So let me just I'll hand it over to you guys in a second, but let's just get our bearings. So for today's forecast, the 30-year normal is way down here. It's I have this sorted. So the 30-year normal is 21.5. The 10-year normal is 28.1. And our range of forecasts, pretty decent range, actually, very decent range, 17.4. So the CFS is back to its colder view, for better or worse. 17.4 on the cold side, up to 39.1 on the warm side. Some of our persistence forecasts looks like they're leading the way here. So, well, it's cold from the CFS. Let's look at that map real quick.
Yeah, I was going to mention this because I took a look at this map earlier. I actually kind of like the way that temperature map looks. Maybe not the actual CFS forecast, but the warmth west, kind of cooler temps in the east, but the northern tier of the east. I kind of like the way that looks.
Well, Michael, why don't you kick us off? Why don't you, give us your and if let's go through the our normal drill if you don't mind. And you could, if you want, you can partner up with Joe, so you could deliver your 2-minute forecast as if Joe's your consumer, and then if you want, you could share. Do you want to share your screen, Michael?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, and then Joe, you can be the tough customer here and ask Michael some of the hard questions.
Okay.
All right, let's see. You gotta let me share the screen, Dave.
Oh,
It's disabled.
sorry.
Oh, don't worry, Dave. Dr. Lupo goes through that all the time.
Yeah, I still forget.
Yeah, let's see. Is it this is one? I think that's the right screen. Yeah, okay, there we go. All right, let me just find my forecast here. I don't want to be given the wrong one. All right, so morning, Joe. My forecast was 26.4 CDDs with a average confidence spread of 6.9. Just going straight into it. Started off with a base value of 26.24 based on my 70% 10-year, 30% Euro blend. And then looking into the teleconnections, I didn't see too clear of a signal here. but the signal I did get with a little bit of tweaking, AO looks to be positive, although don't really start worrying about the AO until probably October. NAO still looking positive, although looking at this map here, not map, this uh, graph here, you can see the average forecast is for a neutral NAO, but the verification recently has been for it to be on the more positive side of its forecasts. So looking at a positive NAO in the 15 to 20-day period. Same thing with the PNA. It's been its main average forecast is for it to be negative. Sorry. And it's been verifying reasonably close, maybe a little bit underneath that line. So, expecting negative PNA with a positive NAO. I'll mention the EPO as well. I didn't use it, I list it, but I still haven't figured out exactly how to incorporate it at the lead time, because just looking at the verification up here and the 14-day forecast, comparing just isn't performing very well in terms of positive or negative forecast, and just completely missing the magnitude in most instances. So still working on a way to fix that. And then last but not least, CPC showing a lot of warmth in the west to continue, um, with some less warmth in the east, and hoping that maybe it'll be a little cooler in my neck of the woods, but that's just a personal problem. um, So all that being said, I only increased my value, my initial value by 0.2 based on the PNA and NAO. And the CPC, despite their warmth, based on what I'm seeing with the teleconnections and this pattern, I'm kind of expecting a little bit more coolness up in the northern tier on the eastern half of the country. So, getting close to Chicago, getting close to New York, getting close to Boston, maybe not making it all the way, but we are looking at late September, so a step down in temperature should be expected at this point. Get some nice cooler air in there. So I am expecting a lot of that western warmth to be kind of uh, kind of leveled out with some cooler temps in the east. And,
So with a negative PNA, and that points to a trough in the west, and a positive NAO points to at least somewhat of a southeast ridge. You're thinking that it would be cooler in the northern tier, especially in the northeast?
Yes. Mainly, my idea there is that this has kind of been the pattern set up that we have right now. More or less, it's a little on the negative side, so it's not like super negative, but neither is this forecast. Same thing with the NAO, it's on the positive side. So I'm thinking it'll be a similar pattern to what we're seeing right now, but the cooler shot will be more pushed to the east, because while the EPO again is kind of useless at this lead time, um, I did incorporate. I forgot to mention that the EPO is like crazy negative right now, and I don't think that'll maintain. I think it'll probably start to head back to more towards a neutral or positive. So they'll give a chance for things to maybe push down a little bit more downstream. I could be completely wrong. I don't. There's always a risk
Real,
involved, as we've
real
seen.
quick, could you go back to that composite for the EPO? Okay, yeah. So with the positive EPO, the surface temps are actually above normal.
In the east.
Yes.
Um, I'll have to look into that. I wasn't. Yeah, I'll have to look into that, and I'll have to get back to you on that.
All right. Very good. Let's see. Any other questions for Michael? I had one, but Michael, I was just going to also say, I know it's hard when you're giving those discussions, but you you don't have to caveat by saying could be wrong kind of thing. You know what I mean? I know it's sort of almost like a reaction, but it's understood, right? That you could be wrong, that the forecasts aren't perfect and stuff like that. That you're giving your best assessment. So just try to think about ways that you can communicate the risk assessment without having to say the obvious, which is my forecast could be 100% wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It sounds, it does, it makes you sound not confident and such. And again, it's kind of stating the obvious. So, and we're testing these out. We're trying to be as professional as possible, and as if you're in a real situation. And if you're telling making that forecast to a big time trader or something like that, he's not going to need to know that you could be wrong. He gets it. He understands that. So just think about that. But that was good. All right. Let's see. By the way, is that Braden on the line? Did I pronounce that right? Maybe not.
Yes, that is correct.
Hey, thanks for joining us. Braden, did you make a forecast today?
So my group is in the process of making one. We're obviously set to submit it here pretty soon, but I guess so this is my first time submitting a forecast and even really doing anything like this. So you'll have to pardon me for not knowing exactly what I'm doing, but I guess what we were thinking or what we're looking at is that.
Oh, Braden, before you get going, do you want to share your screen?
I can.
It's up to you.
I mean, there's not real. I mean, I can, but I don't really have that much to show. I guess what we were looking at was that. So you showed earlier that the CPC had, I don't even know where it is, or CFS. That was what it was. Had a bias of like -10 roughly, and so we were going to play into that and go about 10 degrees warmer than this number. And really the specific number we were looking at was like 26, and had a spread of about 8, I think is what we said. And just kind of looking at, like I said, I don't really know what I'm talking about, but looking at things like these numbers here, and just other various numbers. A spread of 6 with, or I said a spread of 8 with center at 26 is kind of what we were looking at. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not really sure what I'm talking about. So
I think that's a good start, though. No, I think I think you're using some pretty good logic. This is like you said, this is your first time. And I think, applying a bias correction to the CFS, I think there's certainly some evidence out there now between what you already talked about, just looking at the season to date, which is a decent sample size, right? And you didn't mention it, but you could, even in the research tabs, you could go back and look at some previous years and some there. And then Nat Johnson, again, a scientist at GFDL, did a pretty good analysis that we talked about earlier. So no, I like how you're thinking about it. You're trying to find clues and evidence. That's what we do. That to just for maybe systematic errors in the models, which and things like that, and to test out these ideas and theories and to see how they perform, and forecast, measure, revise. That's what we try to do. So
yeah. I just say I'm just kind of here to learn. I like listening to what you guys present and learning from that. So it's kind of what I'm trying to accomplish here.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, feel free to jump in here, and especially if we talk about a topic that you're like, "What the heck is that?" or something like that. Don't hesitate to jump in and ask questions. Okay.
Will do, for sure.
All right. Well, thanks for that. Yeah. All right, Joe, would you like to take over the reins and walk us through your forecast?
All right, let me bring up some of the things that we were. Unfortunately, I didn't have my tabs up to do this, so I'm in the process of bringing them all up.
No problem.
So the one thing that, we were definitely focused on was the fact that the western ridging persistence was there.
Oh, Joe, sorry. Do you want to share your screen?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, once I get
Sure.
get all of my stuff in here. Okay, there we are. So, we've got the MJO via the Bureau of Meteorology down under for the Aussies. Their research has it expanding. Let's see here, when was that initialized? It was initialized on the 6th. So they got between a 30 and 50% chance of it being in phase 5, but more than likely it'll be in phase 4 during this time period. The Japanese, the only thing about that is with the Japanese is it's like this CPC in that they do a week 3 and 4 combination. So we took the trend from the week before and then developed that into our mindset, because as you can see the week before you had the troughing over the west with the ridging being pumped in front of it. But as we move to weeks 3 and 4, the troughing is basically gone and it looks like it essentially lifts up. And because the ridging in front isn't as stout as it was before. And then for analogs, we use an analog set that I developed. Well, I didn't really develop, I expanded on it. And so this takes into account the days 6 to 10 and days 8 to 14 and expands it all the way. Technically, I go all the way out to week 6, but this is what our analogs look for weeks 3 and where's my week 4 and week 4. And that also shows that the troughing is lifting out with the heat coming back, but because we're in the 20, what was it? Yeah, the 23rd through 27th. So this includes that time period. Again, the heat out west, troughing over the east, which has been quite the persistence in the time period that we're dealing with. Here's a different view of the Japanese, by the way, that we look at. And that actually is a little bit on the opposite. The Bering Sea rule, there it is. So taking the Bering Sea rule into account, it has the ridging out west with the central United States trough, and expanding over to the east with a little bit of ridging in the extreme northeast of the country. So with that being said, I actually didn't have a chance to talk with Dr. Lupo much prior to this. We took into account the BSR, the CPC, and even though they went with an equal chance of below normal or regular temperatures for much of the Mississippi Valley and the southeast and deep south, that kind of mimicked what the BSR showed, and that the trough was especially down in the south. And we went with 25.5 with a 6.5 spread, and went slightly above the 30-year. So that's where we came out with what we were wanting.
All right, thank you, Joe. Any questions for Joe? We still have a few minutes left. Hey, Joe, can you pull up your analog method again?
Yeah, sure.
You mind? That was pretty cool. Just to check that out. And
So
what
here's all of the data that you upload to the ESRL website.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, it takes the I'll go ahead and show you. This is the spreadsheet that we developed. Oh, and then expanding also, I took your spreadsheet that you had, and I developed, since a lot of times it comes between the 10 and the 30-year normal, I came up with an average of the two, as you can see, because here's the 10-year normal, here's the 30-year, and then here's my average of the two.
I see.
Even implementing sigma into it. So like, for instance, the 10-year sigma is almost 7.5. The 30 years only 6.39. So I kind of averaged it out for that. And so, here's the 6 to 10 day best 10 analog dates that the CPC uses for their analog dates. And here's the 8 to 10 day set. And then, like I said, I just expanded going all the way out to week 6. But and I take those dates, I upload them to the ESRL website, and there are a lot of times where it hits and a lot of times when it misses. But the subseasonal forecasting a lot is like I said, you take a lot of the trends. So you look at everything, and if most of the trends are opposite of the analogs, I tend to lean towards those other entities. But when the analogs support what we're thinking, it just adds more weight,
Yeah, I think that's a good point, like for Braden and others too. Like I think sort of what my interpretation of what Joe's talking about there is, when you have when you have independent data points that are, arriving at the same conclusion, that could be suggestive of a higher confidence forecast. If you have a CFS model, an EC model, an analog method, whatever other tools that you might use that that you think are reliable, if they, again, if they point to a similar conclusion, that is a way to think about maybe a higher confidence forecast, and vice versa too, right? if the CFS is saying cold, the EC is warm, and your methods are all over the place, maybe that's a way of interpreting a low confidence forecast. And I bring that up because a lot of times forecasting probabilistically, forecasting the confidence, the risk of an event, I think in a lot of ways is harder than just making that deterministic forecast. Like what should my range be? And the more we can talk about ways to do that, ideas, concepts, I think better.
Yeah, and like here's also the sub-X. I saw that it got brought up in someone's forecast. So, again, because this the sub-X stops on the 25th, and then going into week 4, you have to look at, okay, granted it's a little bit extended, but obviously you lost a lot of the cooling, and the ridging comes up over the northeast. So yep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. Let's see. Any other questions for Joe before we close things out? All right. Any other final comments or anything like that from anyone? All right. Well, yeah. Thanks everyone for participating. Hopefully, we'll see you We'll see you again. I believe it's next Tuesday for our next discussion.
That depends on if I'm still isolated, Dave.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So hopefully we'll hear from you. But
like I said, I feel bad that I'm not able to participate at work, but I had to jump in today because I was like, I'm going to see how it's going and whatnot.
yeah, definitely appreciate that. So, all right, well, stay healthy, and yeah, enjoy the rest of the week, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Bye, guys.
Bye.